You are listening to a podcast from JoetteCalabrese.com, where nationally certified American homeopath, public speaker, and author Joette Calabrese shares her passion for helping families stay healthy through homeopathy and nutrient-dense nutrition. Hello, this is Jendi, and I'm here with Joette from JoetteCalabrese.com. Today we're going to talk about skin, the ugly truth. Hello, Joette. How are you?
I'm doing well, Jendi. Nice to talk with you as always.
Let's jump right into the topic. What do you use and recommend people use on their skin?
I urge people to use only food. Now, and I don't mean ketchup and relish. I mean foods such as ointments and oils that are made that are actually from the kitchen. So coconut oil. Now, some people can't use coconut oil, and it turns out that sometimes it's folks who are whose families originate from Northern Europe, so Germany and Sweden and those parts of the world often can't use coconut oil. It's uncomfortable for them, or they actually have allergic reactions to them. And I think it's because coconuts are from around the equator. But so coconut oil is one of my first choices. But if that doesn't work, butter, yes, but without salt, because if you have any cracks or abrasions, then of course salt is going to hurt. But butter is so available. There it is. It's right in the kitchen. And in the old days, they used to say if you have a burn, you put butter directly on. Of course, it's salt-free butter. But one of my favorites on skin, besides butter, is tallow and or lard. So lard is the fat that's been rendered from a pig, and tallow is the fat that's rendered from the fat of beef. And you can make it yourself. Now, it's hard to find this in grocery stores, but if you happen to be purchasing your own meat directly from a farmer, then you ask for the fat and you render your own. It's very easy to do. And then if that doesn't work, you can often purchase it online. So also another method for another product that can be used on the skin is cod liver oil. So that sounds like it would smell really awful. However, there's a wonderful product that Radiant Life sells, and it's cod liver oil that is used, that's made into a product that without the preservatives, et cetera, that doesn't have a strong odor. So cod liver oil is another good one. So saturated fats is what it's boiled down to. Saturated fats. And then, of course, the reason we don't use other products that are manufactured on the skin is because they cause trouble in the long run. They may cover up. They may make things a little more comfortable for a short period of time. But in the end, you don't put anything on your skin that you wouldn't eat, because the moment you put it on your skin, it's absorbed into the system. And the way that I know this, besides the fact that this is a known fact, is that I learned years ago when my oldest son was a little boy, and it was before I knew enough about homeopathy to treat his colds and flus and sore throats, etc., with homeopathy. So I used essential oils and herbs and things like that. So I knew that if you put garlic and you mix it together with olive oil, you mash it all up, and you put it on the bottoms of someone's feet who has got a cold or an infection of sorts, it will absorb into the skin and deal with that with the infection at hand. So he was about maybe 2.5 years old, and I had this mixture of garlic and olive oil, and I said, okay, lay down here on the bed, and I put an old towel under his feet. And I said, I'm going to rub your feet up with this garlic oil, and you stay very still, because I didn't want his feet to touch the covers and ruin the blankets, etc. So I went into the bathroom, washed my hands of all the garlic that I had on them, got some old socks, got another towel to wrap up his feet with as well, came back, put the socks on, wrapped his feet up, put the covers on him, and kissed him. And within those 5 minutes, his breath smelled of garlic. That's how fast what we put on the skin is absorbed into the body. So we always want to use the most pure items on our skin that is worthy of our entire body. The skin is not hermetically sealed. It is it is the organ that is a part of the entire system. So nothing but food.
So that kind of rules out a lot of makeup.
It does rule out makeup. However, I have a little caveat. Yes. Because we women want to be lovely, it is important to use a high quality makeup, to use as little as possible. I wear eyeliner. I wear lipstick, not on a day-to-day basis, but when I go out. And so I buy the highest quality that I can find because it is, and if you're going to use a foundation, then you want to try to find something that is the cleanest and the purest. Now, I've done a lot of reading on this through the years. I don't use foundation personally, but I know many women who do. And one of the companies that I like is Dr. Hauschka. But I don't know that I'm going to stand behind that product. I'm just going to tell you that I use their lipstick and I use their eyeliner. And so I do know that they have foundation, and I've not researched deeply into what kind of foundation ingredients are involved. But you want to read those ingredients. And if there's anything in there you can't pronounce, I would think twice about it.
When you say about the saturated fats, that's for like lotion and cleaning, like a cleanser at night. Is that what you use them for?
No, for a cleanser at night, I would use baking soda and water. I would use raw vinegar and water. I would use a high quality soap like I like Kirk's soap. It's just coconut oil and I don't remember what else is in it, but you can get unscented, and I like that. So, but that's only if you feel you absolutely must wash your face. I don't wash my face. I'll be honest with you. Can't remember the last time I got up soap and scrubbed my face. I just don't do that. I put water on my face, and whatever comes down from my shampoo, then that's useful too. But I use coconut oil and sometimes butter and or tallow or lard on my face and my body in general most every day, even if it's just a little bit. Put it on my neck and all around my eyes, and it feels good to me. My skin is not dry, but sometimes it feels slightly tight, and that feels very comforting to me.
I've been trying to find something for my daughter who's struggling with acne,
Mm-hmm.
and I know she needs to keep her face clean. So would the coconut oil help her with that?
Yes. I believe that keeping clean and then coconut oil afterwards, or lard or tallow, any of those, it flies in the face of what most people would believe is problematic with the skin, and that you have to get rid of the oils. But I believe it's not the oils that necessarily that are causing the trouble. It's what's going on inside. So when we talk about this course that I'm about to present on skin, acne is covered in it. And so we use remedies that are specific for acne, homeopathic remedies. And it's not something that you take for the rest of your life. It's not like something that, such as an antibiotic. These remedies the goal is to root out the pathology, to root out the skin condition. Acne is one of the easier ones to get rid of. I find that psoriasis is more difficult. That's, more entrenched and longer. Usually longer lasting for most folks. But the idea is to get rid of the problem that's at hand, not cover it up or to scrub it away, because it's only presenting on the skin. It really is a representation of what's lurking below. Which, of course, is then why we want to make sure that we're putting on our skin is worthy of our entire body, because it does go directly into the body, and it does have to be processed by the liver. It can affect the gut. We have to be so careful not to use antibiotic soaps, one of the worst ideas that these companies have come up with. But it's based on the pop culture common medical information that's out there that says we have to stay scrupulously clean. I don't buy that. I don't think it's a matter of staying scrupulously clean. I think it's a matter of from the inside out and making sure things are dealt with in a systemic level rather than a localized level.
What if somebody has already used the antibiotic drugs or prednisone or Accutane?
Well, that's a great question, because I don't know anyone who hasn't. You know what I mean? That's the world in which we live. Everyone's used antibiotics. I mean, I think there are very few people in this world who've never had antibiotics. And if they are even in existence, then it means, but their parents had antibiotics, and that changes the gut flora for them as well, potentially. So once you've had these kinds of injuries or insults to the body, now we want to do the best we can to be certain that we keep it as pure as we possibly can now. and try to help the body to undo it on its own. But if you use homeopathy, and of course that's what I'm teaching in this course, that it will uproot that. If we had to look at life as, well, we're doomed. We took antibiotics, we took those birth control pills, we used those steroids, there's nothing left, we're just doomed. Then I might as well just crawl into a hole and die, because that's really a depressing way of looking at life. The beauty of homeopathy is that it is the savior medically. It is the medicine we thought we were getting. It's the medicine we all hoped we were getting, without knowing, of course, the name of it. But every time we went to the doctors as a dermatologist, and I had terrible skin most of all my childhood life. Every time, awful, this was going to do it, this doctor was going to do it, and it not only didn't do it, it made it worse. Everything that was used on me covered it up for a short period of time, and in the long run, it bankrupted my account of health, so to speak. It's like if we use something on the skin that's superficial from the drugstore, from the dermatologist, we see some little bit of benefit, and the benefit is really superficial. It leads us to believe that, wow, this is really working, this is great. Give it some more time, and it will boomerang. It will come back with a vengeance and cause new problems. Sometimes seemingly unrelated problems, but in the end, it turns out that the problems then can go to the gut, or we actually see people go into depression as a result of suppressed skin eruptions. And so suppression is a really bad word in homeopathy. We don't want to suppress anything, because if we're suppressing, it's as though we're unscrewing the smoke alarm in the ceiling when there's a fire ablaze on the stove. All it's doing is taking away the sign that something's wrong. So if you're outside and there's a flame on your stove and you run in, you hear the smoke alarm, you say, oh, that darn smoke alarm, let's get rid of that sign, that signal that something is off. They unscrew it and they throw it in the garbage and they walk back outside again. Well, wait a minute. You haven't gotten to the issue. The issue is the fire on the stove. And so in the beginning, it appears as though you've come up with a solution because you don't have to hear the loud, annoying sound of a smoke alarm screaming at you. But eventually you're going to have to face the fact that there's a fire on the stove. And often with skin, the fire is related to the gastrointestinal tract. So if somebody's had an antibiotic, even one round, or they've used birth control pills, even just a few months, or they've used steroids, even just a round of it, a month, what those drugs do is they suppress the body's natural ability to resolve the problem. And then it shows up depending on what is your weakest link in your body, often on the skin. So in uprooting the skin problems, we're not just going to say, oh, let's just use this ointment and we're on, or let's just use this tallow or coconut oil or cod liver oil on our skin and just be done with it. No. It's a representation of something that's going on a deeper level. And that's what I want to teach, or what I'm teaching in this course. How do you get to the bottom of it? Now let's look at what preceded this. What I tell people is, look, you want to know what's really going on? You want to really get an idea of what has caused this skin issue? Get a pencil, make sure it's sharp, make sure it's got a good eraser on it, get a nice long sheet of paper, and lay out your life in a timeline. And the only part we want to know about your life is all of the health issues. So start now and go back 2 months ago or a year ago or 6 months ago and look at, well, I had bronchitis a year ago. Now, we don't want to know just that you had bronchitis. We want to know, what was the treatment for that bronchitis? Oh, antibiotics. Okay. You write down bronchitis, 2013, November. And the antibiotics. Okay, now you go back further. What was before that bronchitis? Oh, there was another bronchitis 3 years prior to that. Oh, 2011. Here we go. What do you know? Look at this timeline. I remember I took antibiotics for that too. And you go back and you go back. And you can go all the way back to croup as an infant, the vaccines that were given, the steroids that were used, and you lay it all out. And the reason I say you need a good eraser is because you're going to change things around, and you may not remember exactly everything as you approach this little task within that same half hour that you put into this. You keep that timeline out there, and 2 days later you're going to say, you know what, I forgot to put that part about the fact that I had conjunctivitis. Or I forgot, I used to get ear infections too. Well, conjunctivitis is met with antibiotics. Conjunctivitis is met with antibiotics. Now we can lay out and say, holy cow, I think this does have something to do with my gastrointestinal tract. And so when you lay it all out, it is a revelation of monumental proportions. And once we recognize that, now we can say, okay, this does seem to maybe have something to do with my gastrointestinal tract. And it does seem that every time I have milk, my acne's worse. Or if I have too much milk. Or if I have cupcakes with blue dye on them. Or if I have too much wheat. That's where this is likely coming from.
Is it all going back to the gut, or do you pinpoint other issues as well?
No, there are other issues as well. The other issues are, what are the weakest links in the family inheritance? If you look at someone who has terrible acne, look to the parents. Did the parents have acne? Now, the parents are likely not to have had acne quite as severe because it's generational. And what's generational is the voluminous amount of drugs that have come into play in the last generation. So the parent might have had a little acne, and the parent's parent didn't think to take the child to a dermatologist, because in those days, perhaps they just didn't do it. They said, well, here, just have some more eggs, or get out in the sun or something, or scrub your face better. So the answers were, in my estimation, actually more intelligent than going to the dermatologist and getting the drugs, to be honest. So if there's a propensity for something, skin issues, and it may not have been acne for the parent, it could have been eczema, could have been a little bit of psoriasis. Grandpa may have had just a little bit of psoriasis on his knees. But it was no big deal. Now what we do is, if we get what the parents had, because basically we're DNA. I mean, if we look at ourselves as a biological entity, we are DNA. So the DNA, the clay from which we're made, is what the parents, the cumulative aspects of our grandparents and parents, and et cetera, et cetera. So if Grandpa had a little bit of psoriasis on his leg and it didn't bother with it, maybe, and he did use tallow on it because he would have thought to do that. Now his daughter has a little bit of acne, and they didn't do much of it. They used an antibiotic once or twice, and that was the end of it. Now that daughter has a child, and the child has acne. Now what we're looking at is there is a DNA that's running through the family, and in homeopathy we do want to know that if we can, because it gives us information as to what remedies that if we're stuck in terms of using a specific protocol, that the protocols that I teach in my course, we're stuck and we don't know where to go with it, we can always look at a remedy that is specific to uproot family inheritances.
So you're working down to the DNA.
We're getting to the bottom of it. We're getting to the bottom of it. A lot of parents tell me, and I see it on the internet, it's everywhere. I mean, it's one of the most ubiquitous stories in the internet today. My child was perfectly healthy, had great skin until 6 weeks old. He was given the vaccines. Suddenly, the vaccine was on Wednesday. On Monday, my child's got some eczema. What is this? Go back to the pediatrician. Hey, doc, what's with this eczema? I think, could it be related to? Oh no, couldn't possibly be related to the vaccine. Well, if I were in his shoes, I'd be a little uncomfortable too. I might want to deny that, because I was the guy who did it, potentially. And I'm not saying it's a slam dunk, but it certainly is a place where we want to start looking, want to examine all of these medicalized methods of treating the human body. It gets to the point where you start saying, whoa, stop. Okay, I got to get a breather here. I got to figure out what's going on. And so we got to stop treating. We got to start looking at what else is going on. Now, I'm not going to say that it's a slam dunk that it's the vaccines, but I hear it all the time. And I don't think mothers are whiners. I'm going to be honest with you. I think the watchful eye of a mother is a very intelligent place for medicine to be looking. Mothers are just the first step outside of their child, and they're observant, and they note first this, then that. But if they're shot down and told can't be that, no, we have not. There's no link. Then she starts to question herself, and she starts thinking, well, wait a minute. He's saying that, or she, the pediatrician, is saying that can't possibly be related, but boy, it sure seems that way. So she subdues herself, though. She doesn't tell people about it because she knows it's an uncool thing to say. It sounds uneducated. But what it really is her gut saying, but this timeline, it's undeniable. And so I urge mothers and grandmothers to pay attention to what happens to their children. And don't let any industry tell you that you are wrong about that. I'm not saying you don't listen to them, because doctors are fabulous for diagnostics. Excellent. You want to know, is that eczema or is it psoriasis? That can be very useful. Is this rosacea or is it garden variety acne? That's useful information, particularly if you take my course, because I distinguish between that sometimes. And the reason I distinguish it is so that you have an exact protocol of exactly what remedies can be used for something like that.
And homeopathy can help all of those that you mentioned?
Homeopathy has a history of being able to uproot skin issues for over 200 years. In fact, to be precise, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann started his treatise on homeopathy in 1796. So since 1796, whether it's acne in Paris in 1805, or it's eczema in Leipzig in 1870, or it's rosacea in Boston, Massachusetts in 1905, it's the same remedies. It's the same stuff. It's the same protocols. Pretty much. It's the same methodology. Nothing capricious. Nothing has changed. The only thing is that most people don't know about homeopathy. That's the problem. Not that we don't know that the medicines of homeopathy don't know how to uproot illness. It's that nobody knows that it's possible. That's the crux of the problem.
Is there any skin problem that you wouldn't recommend homeopathy for?
I can't think of one. And having worked in Calcutta at the Prasanta Banerjee Homeopathic Research Foundation, I saw skin issues that you would never see here. And why would we not see them here, but we would see them there? That's the kind of the burning question. Is it because there's so much more poverty there? Well, that's part of the picture. That is part of the answer. Is it that they're more prone because they're Indian and not American? No, I don't think so. I think that the reason is that because of the poverty, they don't go to the dermatologist. And the dermatologist doesn't get a chance to suppress it. So they still have illnesses that are expressed on the skin, where in the United States you don't see as many skin issues here. And instead, we see other issues because they're a result of the suppression of all the drugs that have been used on Americans for so many years. When I was a little girl, I used to take a bus to school. It was not a school bus; it was a city bus, and I would get in the bus, and I had eczema as a child, and it was pretty severe. So I was hypersensitive to other people's skin issues, and because of that, I would sit down on the bus and I would look around and I would see all the other people's skin issues. There were lots of skin issues in those days. We're talking about the 50s and 60s. I saw people with lots of warts. I saw people with lots of skin tags. I saw people with eczema and psoriasis and flaking of skin. And I noted it because I was so aware of my own skin. Now, mine was pretty ugly, but it was so suppressed that it only was able to come through every once in a while because of the ointments that had been used on my skin for so long. But a lot of people didn't have the availability of dermatologists like I did. And the reason I did, perhaps, is because I had a lot of doctors in my family, and cousins and et cetera. And so we were taken to the doctors much sooner, I think, back in the 50s, when it was just starting to become a lifestyle. Now, I have to admit, I haven't been on a bus in many years, but my guess is if I were to hop on a bus today, I would likely not see the kinds of skin issues. Instead, I saw them in India. So it's the outward expression of a deeper pathology that remains on the skin for many people in India. And so I saw leprosy in India that still exists. I saw psoriasis that just encapsulated the body, not sat on top of the skin, encapsulated the body. So it looked as though there was a second skin on top of them. I certainly saw acne, and eczema, psoriasis, chronic hives, alopecia, which is hair loss, which we have to consider on some level is a skin issue. So in this country, we look better. The middle class looks better, but in many ways we're worse off. We're sicker.
Did you see some of those cases in India get better?
Yes, I did see it. And not only was I keenly interested in this because of my own history with skin and because I knew I was going to be putting this course together within a year or so, I went back and I went to the data that they collect on the second floor of this world-class research center. And by the way, I might add that all they used was homeopathy, even though they were all doctors, medical doctors. And I went on the second floor and I asked to speak to some of the data inputters on that second floor so that I could go back and look at, they took photographs and you could see the history of a particular case, going back to see how bad it was. So that if I observed a case downstairs with the doctors of psoriasis, for example, and I saw that the plaques still remained, but the doctors turned to me and said, this case was much worse a year and a half ago. I went upstairs and looked at it. I wanted to see it before because now I've seen the whole case. And then I recorded it so that I knew how long it would take. Psoriasis takes a long time to root out homeopathically, but it is doable.
When did you conquer your own skin problem?
Yeah, well, I didn't. And this is what happened. I was 6 weeks old. And I tell the story in my course. I was 6 weeks old and I was healthy and everything was fine. And I went for my first vaccinations. And shortly after, I started to develop, within about a week or two, eczema on my face. My shins, my cheeks looked very rosy, but then too rosy. Then they looked rough. And we went to the dermatologist apparently. And my parents were told I had eczema and that I had to stay away from anything that tasted good. Dairy, so cheese and milk and orange juice and chocolate. Of course, I wasn't having chocolate at that age. I was too young. But nonetheless, all of those kinds of things could not be included in my diet. And I couldn't wear wool and I couldn't have feathers around me. So I couldn't have a feather pillow and couldn't be around dogs and couldn't have cats. And of course, then there was dust. So basically, what you're doing is you're living a life of abstinence from everything. I mean, how do you deal with all of that? So I had eczema in spite of all the shots and all the treatments that I had, and I had plenty, all the way up until puberty. And then at puberty, something changed, which often happens for many people with eczema. It changed to, instead of it being eczema and going to the dermatologist, we ended up at the gastroenterologist because now I had stomach pains. And because all along, it was a gastrointestinal issue because that's often what a vaccine can trigger, for example. So all along it was a gastrointestinal issue, and the dermatologist knew that to a certain degree because I wasn't allowed to eat certain foods. So obviously what was being put in my stomach was affecting my skin to a certain degree. Now, my mother made sure that I abstained from all of those foods, but, it still lived on. There was much more to it than just the food. So then in my teens, I got very sick with a lot of gastrointestinal issues. And then in my 20s, I had a respite, a period of respite where nothing bothered me. And I call that the grace period. And most people have their 20s is a grace period. For a lot of people, I don't get very many people calling me in their 20s who are sick with skin issues or any other issue for that matter. It usually doesn't come back with a vengeance until they get into their 30s. Because then in their 20s, they're taking birth control pills. Another big mistake as far as I'm concerned. If they have a little cold or a little boil or a little sore throat, off to the doctor they go and they get antibiotics. So now they're kind of they're revving up for what's going to happen in their 30s. And then in their 30s it's wham! All hell lets loose. And that's exactly what happened to me. And so I was very sick. I went to doctors again, after doctor after doctor after doctor. I was actually married to a doctor in my 20s, so I believed in the medical paradigm, the conventional medical paradigm. So it took a lot to get it out of my head that drugs were not going to be the answer. It took a long time. I wanted to go to, quote, the learned, unquote. But the learned had learned only to use drugs. I didn't realize that for a long time. Until finally I said, that's it. I'm just as sick with drugs as I am without drugs. So I'm going to stop all drugs, not even an aspirin, not a Tylenol, nothing. I'm going to get everything that's in my medicine cabinet, throw it in the garbage. And I did. I got rid of everything. Except for one thing, Benadryl, which I had never used, but I was afraid because I started to develop asthma at that time. I was afraid very much that I might need Benadryl. It could be a lifesaver for me. I never opened it, never used it, and kept it for a long time, and then finally, eventually threw that out as well, once I learned the method to uproot asthma as well. So now I had asthma and chronic fatigue and a lot of other issues, and I don't want to go into it all. I don't want to bore people, but I had a lot of problems. And it wasn't, and I changed my diet. I was vegan. I was macrobiotic, and I went into and I went to both of these. One, first vegan for many years. Oh, not many. It was for about 3 years, I should say. And then a macrobiotic for a few years as well. Very strict because I wanted relief. So when you want relief, you'll go to the extreme, and that's exactly what I did. Until finally, then I went to vitamin therapy. I used essential oils for many years. I studied them. I studied herbs. I picked my own herbs in the way fields around my home and made my own tinctures. And I went through all of these paradigms until finally I met up with a homeopath. It was a lecture I had gone to, and it was around the time my son was born. And a doctor was offering lectures. He was a homeopath and an MD. And he offered this lecture, and it completely turned my head. It was the most logical lecture I've ever been to. Finally, somebody was saying something that made sense, and I didn't even know what the word homeopathy meant. He wouldn't take my case, so I found someone who had studied in England. About 6 months later, I met with her. She lived, about an hour away from where I lived, and she cured me. Cured me of the asthma. A good amount of the chronic fatigue. The asthma was gone in fairly short order. The chronic fatigue took longer, and then I decided I wanted to learn. And once I learned how to use homeopathy, then I was able to finish the rest of what she hadn't finished for me.
And
I never turned back.
And now you have beautiful skin?
Now I have beautiful skin. Now I don't have gut problems. Now I don't have asthma. I don't have any of those things. I get a little bit of allergies at this time of year. I don't know if you've noticed, I scratch my nose here and there. I feel a little itchy once in a while when the leaves turn and there's mold, etc., and there's a change in weather. Nothing compared to what I've had all my life. And I can eat anything now.
Even chocolate?
Well, yes, even chocolate. But I just don't eat it in large amounts.
Right. So you've taken all this learning and what you tried on yourself, and you're putting it into this course. Can you tell us a little bit? Is it just reading, or is it audio, video? What is it?
It's audio, and it's a PowerPoint presentation, and it is my opus on many levels. It's cumulative of 62 years literally 62 years of trying to figure this skin thing out from the time I was 6 weeks old. Now, I didn't have the wherewithal to figure things out when I was 6 weeks old, but I can tell you very early on in my age, I said, there's got to be a cure for this. There's got to be a way. Even as early as I'm remembering, say maybe 8 or 9 years old, there's got to be a cure. Why am I not better? And so this is the answer as far as I'm concerned. And so what I'm going to teach folks is how to deal with most of the common skin ailments that people suffer from. And I'm using the protocols. I'm teaching them the protocols that I learned when I was in India working with Doctors Banerjee. And then we're going to use some cases. It will be live to start, and then later on, of course, it will be recorded, and we'll be able to probably present it, a couple years from now as well. But this is a live course, and folks will be able to join in and not only submit cases, and I can't promise I'll cover all cases, but I'm going to try to find as much time as I can to do that. But they'll be able to join in an online forum where other people who are suffering from the same skin issues, or their children or their parents are suffering, they will be able to meet and discuss what has helped them out of the protocols that I've presented.
Sounds like a great course. And they can get that through JoetteCalabrese.com?
Yes, they go to JoetteCalabrese.com, and when you go there, there will be information. And I urge you to read the story. I mean, I give more information about my own personal story, and note what other people have said about how skin issues have been resolved for them with these Banerjee protocols, these homeopathic Banerjee protocols.
Thank you so much, Joette, for talking to us today and telling us about homeopathy and your own story. And I, for one, am going to go get my coconut oil out of the cupboard and try it on my face today.
Great, Jendi. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to this podcast with Joette Calabrese. If you liked it, please share it with your friends. To learn more and find out if homeopathy is a good fit in your health strategy, visit JoetteCalabrese.com and schedule a free 15-minute conversation with Joette herself.